Welcome back to Rod's Radios. This is part 4 of the restoration of a Philips B6X72A radio. And when we left in part 3, I faced the prospect of digging into the FM tuner. So let's see what happened.
Okay, Rod, it's time to stop faffing about and get this FM tuner out and see what's going on. So to do that, I've got to take the glass off the front again, and prior to that, remove these 3 buttons which are held on by circlips at the back here, and the 2 tone controls, the bass here and the treble over here, that are linked through the glass front. Remove the glass and then take a note of the wiring from which the FM tuner links to the rest of the radio. There are 3 wires on the top here, so I'll take a note of that, the colors, etc. There are 2 capacitors linked from the aerial socket onto the back of the tuner, and I think there's an earth strap wiring the case of the FM tuner to the rest of the unit. Then around here at the side, I'm going to try and de-link the drive from the pulley where the dial drive cord goes around to the tuning capacitor itself, because if I don't do that, I'll have to remove the pulley itself back here, and at that stage the whole dial drive will collapse again, and I don't want that to happen. So hopefully if I can get those 2 screws, which are awkward to get at, I can de-link the drive to the capacitor. Then I can hopefully find the screws that connect the tuner itself onto the chassis base. I think there's 3 big screws that do that. So onwards and upwards. Herein lies madness, I think.
Well, after a bit of a tussle, I managed to remove the FM head end off the chassis, where you can see it here, and there was an extra screened lead sticking out of the bottom, as you can see here as well. Now, this is a rat's nest of components, and if I thought I was ever going to be able to replace the valve base on this, I was thoroughly mistaken, because it's buried right down there underneath all these specially positioned capacitors, resistors, coils, etc. So I haven't a hope in hell in doing that. So the next thing was to actually start measuring some of the components that were accessible. Now in this tuner there's 5 resistors. So I started to measure them, and 4 out of the 5 were perfect, absolutely spot on. But the 5th one was out by a considerable value. And if you look at the circuit diagram here, you can see the HT line coming in from the chassis itself through this resistor. This resistor isn't in the tuner. And it hits this point here and goes through 2 resistors to each of the anodes of the ECC85 valve. And this is the one that was out of kilter. It's a 10K resistor, and it's positioned here in the tuner, and it was measuring 36% higher than normal. So it should be 10K, and it was measuring 13.6K. And it also looks slightly burnt. I'm not quite sure, but to me it looks slightly burnt. So if this resistor is a bit dodgy, it could be causing this fault, that when it's under load, it's changing its value slightly and bringing the voltage either up or down. So maybe I found the problem, or maybe not, but this is the only thing that I can think of that might be causing this. So I'm going to replace this resistor and see how that works out. It's a bit of a job to get it in, but I'll get it in all right, and it's a bit of a job to get the tuner back in the way it was originally. I hope I can do that, but that's the next plan, because other than that, this tuner was never meant to be repaired. I don't know how Philips manufactured it in the first place. Must have been a bit of a nightmare on the assembly line, getting all these parts in the correct position and then aligning it for best use. So let's see how that works out. Onwards. With the 10K resistor replaced, I've checked the connections around the tube base as best I can. So this is as far as I can go with the FM module. Hopefully this will have made some difference to it, if not fixed it completely. So it's time to reassemble the unit and pop it back into the chassis. This might take a little longer than taking it out. The FM tuner head end has been replaced and I've switched it on, so it's just warming up now. So let's see if we hear anything. A miracle, it's still working. I can't believe it. And if I just have a look here at the magic eye, and yeah, I'm getting pretty full signal there. So at this stage, the thing is to leave it on soak test and see if the signal remains strong, and that'll give me some indication whether this has been a success or not. So let's see what happens now. The FM reception now seems to have stabilized, so fingers crossed it stays that way. In the meantime, I've made this little button to fulfill the missing one that was here, and I've made it out of an old knitting needle that I sanded down, roughened the surface and dipped it in the only colouring I had, which was a dark brown wood dye, and it seems to have held all right. And then I sprayed the top pip on the outer surface with gold spray paint. So it matches the existing ones pretty well, I think, and I'll pop it in now in a minute. Over on this side of the radio, I have one of the Bluetooth modules that I like to fit to these radios, because more and more AM reception is disappearing. And in fact, here in Ireland, we only have 2 stations really available. One is the national broadcaster on long wave, and the other is Radio 4 long wave over from the UK. There are a few stations on medium wave, but they're very hard to get, particularly during the day. So the Bluetooth module extends the usefulness of these radios, and this is an example of it. And just to explain quickly how it works, in here comes 6.3 volt AC taken from the heater chain of the radio. That's rectified by a diode and smoothed here, and it's fed to a little transistor here. Now, separate to that, there's a feed coming in from the HT line, in other words, the B plus of the radio, and through a voltage divider, it's fed to the base of this transistor, which can switch it on and off depending on the absence or presence of HT. And this switches in turn a relay, which through a network of capacitors, again to keep it smooth, is fed to the actual Bluetooth module itself over here. And depending on whether you select radio or gram, this Bluetooth module will switch on and off. Because in the case of radio reception, we don't want the Bluetooth module to switch on and create interference on the radio reception. So this works particularly well in this case. And the HT switch on and off is actually fed from a point up here on the magic eye, because the magic eye is actually switched off during gram reception. So this is where we get our switching voltage here. And other than that, there's a little module tagged onto the end here, because I found that the signal coming out of the Bluetooth module is actually much lower than the radio reception volume level. So this little module equalizes it up and boosts it up by about 3 or 4 times. So this works particularly well in this case, and I'll show you how it works. So if I switch on the radio and select one of the wave bands, say FM in this case, no, we'll select medium wave. So I switched it on, and you can see initially this module lights up because the HT hasn't built up yet. The Bluetooth is flashing looking for a signal, and if you see, it's now switched the relay off because the HT is built up, and we can listen to medium wave reception if there was any today, but it's particularly bad at the moment. So now if I select gram, or in other words Bluetooth reception, now the Bluetooth module comes on, and the little blue light here will start flashing looking for a Bluetooth signal. So this is working pretty well. At this stage, the radio is more or less complete now, and all I have to do is disassemble it from the frame, and along with the speakers and the Bluetooth module, fit the whole lot back into its cabinet. The chassis is back in the cabinet now, And one last thing I did was to fit a new mains lead. This is a 3-core mains lead with the earth wire linked onto the chassis, and that provides a certain amount of safety rather than the normal 2-core flex. However, when I went to test the radio, I found that there was a slight hum still coming out of it, even though I checked all the electrolytics thoroughly, and I checked them again, and there was still nothing wrong with it. And I also noticed there was a slight distortion at low frequencies on both the radio and the Bluetooth reception. So I checked through the circuit, and the final thing I replaced was the EL84, which proved to be the problem. And this has the old EL84 in it, and when I scoped it, this is what I saw. A 50 Hz signal sitting on the speaker with the volume control turned down at a peak-to-peak voltage of 1.72. That certainly wasn't right. And as I mentioned, it was the EL84, the output valve, causing the problem. So I'm just going to put a new output valve into it now and wait till we see the difference. So with the new EL84 in place, that hum has disappeared virtually. It can't even measure the frequency. It says it's less than 10 Hertz, and the peak to peak has gone way, way down as well. So I think this is our solution. So sadly, I'll have to start shopping for more EL84s because that was the last one I had. So, time to turn this beast around and let's see what it looks like and what it sounds like. Okay, let's hear what this sounds like now. Starting with VHF or FM at the lower end of the band, 87.5.
Last week, Nick Hornby shot to the top of the leaderboard in the race to become Ireland's greatest non-sports person.
That's RTE1.
Finest writers push him off top spot today. Let's find out as...
with more positive and encouraging hits.
FM2. Another local station.
Paul Muldoon tachten dangen, maar goed de hemel.
That's the Irish language station.
Old school Americana.
To look for more things. Now, apart from that,
90s, Ireland's classic hits.
I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but
website. And up next, we take a look at the rating.
Let's get down to business. Let's get down to business.
That's Lyric FM, the classic station. Today FM. And we're up at the top of the band. This radio just goes up to 100 megahertz, unlike modern radios that go up to about 108 on the FM band. So the next one is shortwave. I won't get much on this at this time of day. It's mid-morning. I don't expect to get anything, to be honest. No. Then medium wave, again, I don't expect very much. I'm in a garage here, so the reception is dreadful on medium wave. However, that's our national AM station, RTE1. And the only other station I expect to get is BBC Radio 5 in one position there.
I think the big thing is, Steve, this is arguably...
That's BBC Radio 5 again.
Have made it to the final. And how often
Not
does
too
that
bad.
happen?
And other than that, I don't think there's anything else. Well, there's something else. No, just noise. And moving on to long wave. Now again, I'll only expect to get two stations here. The first one being BBC Radio 4.
roars of the crowd welcomed him into Victoria Square in Birmingham, and England have failed to reach the quarter-finals of the men's rugby sevens.
Zero points was a better reflection of his abilities.
And again, RTE1 on the long wave,
The conversation
252.
one party, if I recall correctly. Just to remind us, how does the scoring system work?
What number did he call?
Finally, Bluetooth reception. And for that purpose, I have some hopefully royalty-free music on the iPad here that we play. So for that, I press the pickup button, turning up the volume first of all. And I get the welcome jingle of the Bluetooth module. And just wait for a moment for it to kick in. And now I press play on the iPad. Sounds pretty good. So this project took a little bit longer than I expected, but I think it was worthwhile in the end. So, if you have been, thanks for watching.